I'm just looking to see if they're going to let me tape because they turned off it. They turned it off the last time, so I couldn't. Hi, this is Lynn Schnapply with Educating with Wisdom. I'm the ambassador for Heaven's protecting and creating, the way around, goddesses and archangels over life. And I'm sorry I did that, but they turned off my screen the last time. And I'm going to try to do this within a half an hour so that I can quickly get something else off. I'm going to preface all of this by saying that you're going to look at the incentives called punishment, patterned punishment, so that you understand that the issue of heaven is in fact a loving system. And we do have loving gods, and we do have loving mother, father gods. But in order to protect the rest of heaven, we have to engage in a certain type of behavior in order to be allowed to continue. And it makes it clear in the book of Daniel, as well as the book of Revelation, that those people who would destroy the earth and corrupt it need to go. Now, there are various ways of thinking about destroying and corrupting. So I'm just going to say, dear Heavenly Father, Mother, please help me to, in the most expeditious fashion, relay what you would like me to say to these people so that they understand that you mean business, and to help put it into psychological and economic terms. In your holy name we pray. We don't say amen anymore because that is for Amen Ra. All right. I'm working on that one. If we go back 300 years ago, men had no clear-cut understanding that they actually were a part of reproduction. They knew they had something to do with reproduction, but even though they said that they gave the person, that's what they literally thought they did, they had absolutely no indication that they were in fact giving the person. So there was a great deal of marginalization that men would have found themselves in regarding the reproductive process of being part of a family. Now, within the last 100 years or so, men clearly understand what sperm is, and they've always known that women had eggs, even though they denied it, always. But now they have a clearer picture that they themselves are a part of this process, and they're part of the creation of a human being process. So those things that pertain to God the Father, and exclusively God the Father, is no longer appropriate. And it wasn't appropriate before. Therefore, men and women today do not need those old terms. And those old terms are not actually part of the Old Testament, and they weren't a part of Jesus Christ. It's important when we discuss Jesus Christ, just to speak briefly. He came, he was divine in that regard. I mean, if we just think about the way he acts, he told men they couldn't have sex with their slaves. He told them they couldn't have sex with other people. He told the Pharisees when they brought the woman before him who was the adulterer that, who among you hasn't done this sin? What he was really wondering was, where was the man who committed the adultery with the woman who was supposed to be stoned at the same time? And Paul takes it several steps further, as does Jesus, and he says anybody that has sex out of wedlock when you're married commits adultery, period. So if we look at ourselves regarding as what we thought we were Christians, if we were to take a look at Christ and put that into the perspective of the United States has never been a Christian country. Jesus Christ and St. Paul never would have said it's okay to have sex with your slave. That would never have happened. Ever. Okay? Jesus Christ and St. Paul would not tell you that it's okay to beam down pornography. They would never tell you that. They would tell you it's wrong. They would tell you it's against heaven. They would tell you it's a sin. They would tell you it's not your right. And they would also tell you that when you have the opportunity, but you spend your time hiding behind a civil system, which gives you the right to do that, and then you turn around and do it, you're the one not going to heaven. You're the one not saved. So don't tell me that this is a Christian country and was a Christian country, because this has never been a Christian country. Do I make myself clear? Now, as representing Artemis of Ephesus, which goes back into Hapat, which was El Shaddai for Sarah, the one that kept saving her. And Yisrael is the arm of Sarah's God. That's who it is, and that's Jesus, by the way. When we take a look at the actual feminine terms that are found in the Old Testament, a lot of it is covered up, and it's covered up as a survival mechanism, but it's also, yeah, that's what it is. It's covered up as a survival mechanism. They had to be able to get whatever terms going through the system and to make sure that throughout an entirely misogynistic world, that there would be a little toe wiggling down in there so that somebody would eventually catch it. And I caught it. And that made me a very dangerous, dangerous person for the world system. And the world system, that is the age of men. All of a sudden now we're off in terms of time, so I know they're playing with me. Close your eyes and listen, please. We're going to go into certain areas. When we do a functional behavioral assessment, it's important to understand what is the antecedent, what is the behavior, and what is the consequence. So, if you say that the antecedent is part of your primary archetypes and paradigms, and your antecedent is incorrect, therefore the expectation and the behavior that will come from it will also be incorrect. And in order to sort of fix things, you're constantly straightening things out and you're expending all kinds of energy. So if you really want to save energy, you make sure your primary archetypes and paradigms are better. The problem is that in the Old Testament, New Testament, and in all of the testaments of the world, everything that is relatively misogynistic in nature, or if it were just totally female emphasized in nature, each one of those things would be negative in value, and it would cause problems, deep problems in the society, and all kinds of mistakes. Even though I'm a Sagittarian, so I deal with up with the center, dealing with the goddess, especially with Ephesus, each one of those, when it moves too far away from that sort of centrality, we're not respectful of both sexes, we're going to use up not just tremendous amounts of personal energy, but also resources. So in a male-dominated society, we know in male-dominated societies, women are sold, there is polygamy, there is far more war, they tear the earth up, and it's part of the age of the beast. On the other hand, if we just go to a female system, we tend to have these cycles, and we're simply just going around in cycles, and there's never any movement out of that cycle, and the cycle is always the cycle. And men may or may not have much of a relationship with their children. You talk about how the king of the beast, how we moved around in small hunting and gathering sections. But as soon as we began to get things like agriculture and we began to settle down, which by the way happened about 23,000 years ago when we were in a phase of Capricorn in Israel, which is the most important thing that nobody really wants you to know. But the Israelis and some people do want you to know this now. The importance of that meant that we could get together, we could settle down, men and women could work together, and at that point it becomes a whole different story. And that's where Adam actually comes down. I did not know when God called me that I would be abused like this. So when I talk to you about the punishments and the patterns, I want to make it clear to you, I do not cause them. I am letting you know what happened, and I'm letting you know that it is a consequence of your behavior. I'm letting you know that so that you understand that God is showing you the patterns. I'm letting you know what the behavior was, and you're getting to know what the consequence was. And I followed the patterns that God asked me to do. Here's the other thing. I wanted Jesus to come and do this. I did. I really did. I mean, like most of you, I wanted there to be somebody else to do this. And I kept reaching out to men, and I kept telling men, and I kept giving it to people that I thought were going to do it correctly. And I had men who said that my husband had a right to walk around naked in front of our kids when my son was 13 and my daughter was 7. And this man had, like my husband had a partial erection. He said he wanted to get dressed up in women's clothing. He did all kinds of things. He had men enabling him to do this. Professional men, psychiatrists, psychologists. Well, not the psychologist, one of them. But you're going to see in the case of my testimony and what I bring to the picture from Canada and before, men give men the right to do it, and women give men the right to do it. Now, there's another very important thing, and I don't want to go over this 10-minute period, is that in terms of men in breeding, when we look at the 4th house, or when we look at the bee, that very important 4th house, when we talk about the zodiac, I'm not talking about, pardon me, first of all, the church and everybody uses it, so stop saying that they don't expect you to use it. Secondly, I go with where God tells me to look in the zodiac and what patterns I expect to see. The Magi used it. They all used it. Daniel uses it. The Vatican, Rome has 13. All right, 13 obelisks, which represent a penis from Egypt in Rome alone. Okay. They're very occult-centered. Christianity, which is this non-centralist version of the reality of the truth, is very occult-driven. When you deliberately translate something incorrectly to get your way, when you deliberately give a lie, it's called spell casting. It is spell casting. So when I talk to you about witchcraft and the witches that came after me, this is correct. But I will tell you that the church and the various religions have been engaged in spell casting by deliberately presenting things that they knew were incorrect. These are spellcasters. So when in Genesis it says, and God created Adam, and that is in an entirety, and separated it into Ish and Isha, it wasn't from a rib. It was the entire side of the individual went. So we had an individual that was male-female or female-male, because it's 75% female, 25% male, which Nostradamus does point out, by the way. I'll show you in a moment. And that's separated, and that's the greater being. And that only that coming together produces a whole individual, which allows you to have children. When you do it that way, well, then all of a sudden men need women and women need men. And this is something that a highly misogynistic population doesn't want. The other problem that we have coming in with women in breeding, coming back to that 4th house, is that in order for men to gain control over society, they bred down. Women that were really smart, they killed. Or they killed. That's what they did. Just like they tried to kill me for a long time. And they take your ideals, as Dale Spender said, women's ideas and what men have done to them. They go after you to kill you. And it's only when they realize, in my case, that I fulfilled a propheticness of consecration and of anointment. I'm the anointed one. And of consecration, I am consecrated. And when they realized that I had a karma which allows you to go back in and fix the problems of witchcraft in England, as well as going back and to heal and give justification for Israel, so that we can move forward with the necessary funds that you need. Only when that happened, and when Mr. Trump came in, did they did I begin to get some slack, real slack. The Germans, the Russians, they all know about me, and they all know that Barack Obama and the British have had nasty hand feelers out. So I'm going to go in and let you know where the problem is. Oh, when I say men bred down, what happens in polygamy and in a male-dominated system whereby the upper men get more than the lower men, by a lot, okay? There are a few ways that they get more. One, they get slaves and they get more, and they have sex with female slaves. Two, they keep women in relative poverty so that they have women more at their command. One, they put out shortages of men, which is what they very much did in Africa and also elsewhere. You know, they make it so that men have to go to war in order to have sex and to have a family. So they have to go to war to have sex and have a family. And therefore, women are part of that Venus. In the morning and in the evening is when you miss this the most, okay? And on top of that, you realize that you have to go and risk your life there. And women are risking their lives when they have children back then, because, I mean, we died like flies. So Islam continued that through a great deal. In order to go out and prove yourself, you had to kill and then you had to bring back women. This is, you know, this is not what Jesus is about. This is not at all what Jesus is about. At the same time, they breed low. So low men would not survive. The upper echelon that really question would not survive, but there aren't that many up there. So there's this area that is what modern people would say between an IQ of 135 and 160, and they kind of ruled the world. Well, back then it was considerably lower, but they kind of ruled the world. And they control reproduction for the masses. So the men died who were low, and the women who were low still got to breed. And they bred us down. It's going to take a few generations to get everybody really up and running to where they're supposed to be. So it's going to be necessary that women say to themselves, even today, even though they have bred us down, not only do we also have the words for God and the goddess in the Old Testament, and not only did Jesus give it to us, not only does it trace back to Sarah's goddess, Hippa or Hippa, which is related to the Upas in Lydia, which is Artemis of Ephesus, who had a Essenes priest, and there were the Essenes that were in Israel, all right, and the Nazareth is a female construct for seed of Sarah. Gets more interesting, right? Not only do we have all these things to look forward to, and we get to look forward to it with men too, because it will help to change the dynamic. It's not going to feminize men, but it's going to mean that men are going to be elevated to a higher spiritual area, whereby your more positive gifts can come out. We're going to take that negative energy and help move it into those positive gifts that God has blessed you with. And it's important for women to understand that men have real gifts. And it's important for men to understand that women have real gifts. And then there is that overlap. So let's go in and talk about, because I'm going to look at where we are at this minute. Okay, it's basically at 19 minutes, so I didn't do too well in terms of getting to the 10-minute point. So I'm going to let people know at the beginning that it's at the 19-minute point, if they want to go in and take a look at where some of the catastrophe occurred. Okay. Oh. Hi. We're going to go into this, and I kept my hard drives and soft floppy disks from my Canadian computer up till today, even though some of them have been destroyed. Okay, we're going to work off of this. And the other thing I want to make it clear is I'm not saying that I'm happy with New Zealand or Australia or England. I have dual citizenship. And if you knew how I was treated by the New Zealanders, when I say Canada could take them because of the earthquakes and everything that's going to happen, I don't want you to think that I think highly of the New Zealanders. The New Zealanders denied me support payments because it was part of the lack of reciprocity between the United States and New Zealand. But they allowed my former husband, who was a university professor, who kept skipping out of countries rather than paying support. My daughter was dying. Our daughter was dying from an autoimmune disease. He wouldn't even come to the phone for me. New Zealand harbored him, and they kept him. And it was the Academy of Management that came to my aid. But I'm going to go in and discuss some of these things. So when I say that I'm looking at bringing certain things over, it has to do with what Canada can do. And when I talk about Australia, it has to do with what we need to do for China and for the other beings. It's not because I'm that gung-ho on these people. When I lived in Canada, to be honestly, I got along better with a couple, an academic couple that were from Nepal. I got along better than some of these, better with them. I considered them better friends than an academic couple that was from Australia. I mean, I'm not racist, folks, but I'm simply looking at what the world needs us to be. Now, I think New Zealand dug its own grave. I think it's going to be too late. But let's go in, because 2011, 2012, so we're going to work off of this. This is constantly telling me that I need to fix this, but I'm afraid to fix it because I'm afraid somebody's going to erase it. So continue without scanning. Let's continue without scanning. We're going into, this I guess is my Canadian, my AOL, my practice teaching. Okay, so we went right into the Canadian documents. I would like to make it clear to the people, and this is online already. I'll show you. Perhaps I will get a chance to see it there. Let's open it up. All right. This actually went out in December the 12th. This is an old copy. The original copy should be on my hard drive or on the floppy disk. This was not what I have on this little flash drive. It's not everything that I had. These were the Francophone people who were there. And then there was Ian Purvis. God told me in 2001 that I would have I would go there would be 3 judges, and they would all have biblical names. So I had, his name was Marc Richard, all right, Michel Carrier, and Ian Purvis, and I wouldn't tell them what I knew. I said, even after I had witnesses going there, I said, I'm not going to go out on the line and tell these people what you want me to do. And I said, there aren't 3 biblical judges. There's 1 biblical judge, and that's when God had me going back and forth in my baby book and led me around it and finally had me go back in to look under John, and Ian is John in Irish. So that was it. I lost that one with God. All right. I lose a lot with God. All right, so I let people know our Constitution, here we go. You can see that even back in 2003, I am dealing with paradigm shifts. I'm coming to them from help. I'm looking at the Union of the Americas, the Canadian-US free trade with North America free trade capital. We need common law throughout the area, all right, so that we will protect Union of the Americas. Over the millennium, I let them know that this is happening, the Messianic age. This is also to be the age of the Indian. All right. By the way, I was absolutely wrong about what the Masonic, the Freemasons believed. So everything that the Freemasons gave us was a bad idea. All right. So right now I'm looking at bad idea that I did. I have other things that are there, the Logos and the Matrix. I'm talking about how this works in terms of truth, how it works in terms of paradigms and archetypes. All right, the creation stories, how it's been said incorrectly, how that totally changes us. And all of this is here. I talk about going to a women's college, what this is all about. All of this is really here. paradigm shift, multicultural, regionalism and disparity, the US and the Hispanics, when I look at regionalism and disparity, when I look at the Act of the Francophones, what they're doing, I've already had this here. I'm closing this out, and this is on my birthday, and I am really talking about the Union of North America and the paradigm shifts that need to come up. Now, what happened to me in Canada was not only did I have a problem in life in terms of the false readings of the Bible, but my whole family did. So, for instance, and again, that went out on the 12th of December, and I already have the issues of Canada out there. Let's see if the 21st is here. I grew up with pornography in my family. Well, why am I growing up with pornography in my family? That doesn't make any sense. Let's see, my documents. What are my documents? Canadian computer. All right. Now, this is not all of my Canadian computer, but this is some of it. Combo 2, Dean. You'll see the invalidation of the language arts assessment that was done to set up the whole Francophone system in Canada. No, it was not done to set it up. It was done to support it. And I'm just looking to see where Richard is. I'm just going to put us on pause for a minute. Okay. Here we go, January, this is January 1, 2003, and I already have the information out there regarding I have this all here. I am assuming that the Spanish have already gotten it. Now, all right. I just thought, wouldn't it be nicer to have the world diverted from its present threat of war in the Middle East to the beginning of the Union of the Americas? Now, I was looking at this actually being sealed the next time Jupiter went into Leo, which would have been in 2014, 2015. Well, the Canadians turned right around and started negotiating to join up with Europe. Now, let's come in and see the February one. This is where it's uncomfortable for me, but as I do further research, you will see that I think I have the right to take down the red dragon of Europe, all this dragon and all of this witchcraft, which was recommended to me. And not recommended to me as a person. Here we go. Now, this knowledge came to me as I was just entering my Capricorn phase, about a year 15. Here we go. I have a karmic attribute for Queen Elizabeth I. It's nothing that I really want to talk about, but given that Queen Elizabeth I is the one who brought the red dragon into the crown, based on the recommendations of John Dee, who was supposedly deeply religious, but also a magician. And he dealt with spells and all kinds of things, which was normal in Europe. It was normal. And these things happened because our translations of the Bible and what they taught us were wrong. But I would like to be able to come in, if I have the ability to make this stop. Then it should happen. And also, when you get into Isava, you're looking at the Illuminati and the Freemasons. And if I can make this stop. I didn't know this back then. I didn't know that Isa was also the great Hindu goddess overall. I didn't know Isava was related to the Benedictine and Bernard. I didn't know that they did the Third Crusade. I didn't know. I didn't know any of this. And this means the Eastern Rising Sun. I did not know it when God told me to write it. I didn't know it. But if I can make this a cult, if I can help make it go away, if I can help take it away from the British, if I can help get it out of our lives, then please help me so that I can do this for them. Because it needs to leave. And it needs to leave those people. If that was the means by which we got colonialism, if this was the means by which we exist, then it needs to go, because the red dragon is Revelations and there's no way around it. When I found out that the British were the red dragon in December of 2016 is when everybody started hitting Russians and Trump so hard. Okay, here's my intro to my claim. And remember, this was moved over into a different, onto that drive, but it was originally written in 2001. I mean, I wouldn't have written it then. And I already have the Law Society. And I already have I already have the Law Society file on the internet. And I already have a copy of it. So here we go, cream tart, blah, 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 blah. The main thrust, while addressing Roberts and my conduct, it's important that the Law Society look at the issue of prior mental and physical conditions, as well as the professional's own lifestyle and choices in regard, for instance, to their right to take a case they know they cannot do, or for which they have a conflicting and possible hostile bias. This is the case that would have changed everything for the LGBT community. My former husband did sexually deviant things, some of which would have fallen into nudism, saying he wanted to get dressed up in women's clothing, although he never did. And other men made fun of him for that, which was very weird. But Robert Jackson was a bisexual who was very active with, I guess, the Hatfield group. And when he did not take certain information on my case, didn't act on it, didn't protect me and the kids, even though I called him up and begged him, reading the Charter of Rights and Freedoms to him, when my witnesses included the dean of the business school, German faculty, and a man that he wrote papers with, Myron Razun. When these people were my witnesses that showed up to this lawyer, this case, had it gone to court, aside from the completely crazy psychiatrist in the legal profession that gave Udo the right to act this way, this case would have called into question whether or not this community can be fair, and they can't be. Let's see what minute that occurs on. Okay, 33:14. Let's see what we have here. Fundamental freedoms, legal rights, examples, general, so on and so forth. I have it all here as far as, okay. Cruelty and treatment, already. Thank you. So even though someone may say they have the right to be a bisexual or a homosexual, they may not handle every case. And that's also true of a lot of heterosexual men. So it's very important that the paradigm is just shifted completely. Before we go in terms of the strikes, let me make something clear. When I talk about the patterns, these are not patterns that I myself, Oprah, I disagree with Oprah. I get things that come into me from God. So I am not God. God does come into me. God helps to lead me. Some of these things I have more ability on my own, but some of these things I have no ability. And I have miracles that I have no ability on my own in which to do. So in terms of pattern, Barack Obama, when he found out that I knew these things in 2011 and in 2012, he shut me down completely because he was not one of the great leaders, and he just took my life. So if we look at World War II and who were the great leaders in Europe at that point, they were all Sagittarians. That was one of the reasons why Comey picked me up, because his birthday is December the 14th. That was Nostradamus, and I was doing a call for Nostradamus. So on the 27th of October, 2016, when I walked into the Republican office and said, look, I know Hillary Clinton needs to be impeached, and I know she's going to be impeached, and I know that the British and Obama have set her up. I mean, the next day, Comey was right on it, and he came out and said Hillary Clinton was still being investigated. Now, these are all Sagittarians, all 7, and that is statistically impossible. When we take a look at, so don't tell me not to use astrology when God points me to astrology to say these are the things that need to happen. In Sagittarius, and look at them. I mean, who would think Joseph Stalin? That's why I knew it wasn't going to be, it wasn't the Russians. Between them having a coat of arms that has St. George on it, and the British having the red dragon, I knew right away that the problem was not going to be the Russians, and it wasn't. I knew I had known from 2011, late 2011 on, that I was being, they were after me. I knew that. By 12, I got absolute threats. By 2012, March 2012, the physical threats came in. Okay, nobody would look after it. These are the earthquakes we're going to look at. Now, this is actually the 22nd, and they sent me a site that I put up elsewhere already online, letting me know that this actually began on December the 22nd. These are all 4 events. 4 actually goes with Uranus and Capricorn. Now, for those of you that don't know this, it was Urania originally under the Minoans, okay? And then the Greeks came in and took it over and made it Uranus, but it was, and Urania was like the most fantastic goddess. So this is a very different thing we're looking at. And these are 4 events. So maybe it's Uranus hitting us, but maybe it's Urania that's saying, okay, it's time for you to get to know who we are. These were all 4 events. I went in, and what you're going to see is the 5 in the 5th house has to do with Leo. And Leo is always affiliated with Lucifer, at not a good time. Plays games and wants to see man fall. You think of him as the king of the beast. That is correct. He is the king of the beast. Okay? Don't forget that. Hapat is sitting on the king of the beast. The king of the beast is along the robes of Artemis of Ephesus, but it's not over Artemis of Ephesus. This is a very different configuration. So anyway, on the 30th, you're going to see on the 30th of 2010, I'm reaching out to try to get support payments, and the American Academy of Management is going with me as a witness. The church would never stand up and do the job, but the American Academy of Management did. 5 days later, we got 4 months for each one of the 4 quarters. We get hit. These all add up to 4. Remember, this is really the 22nd in many areas. We get these major earthquakes that are hitting, and Christ Church doesn't know it's hitting it. And now we know they're going to be hit with a 9. Okay? So this is a pattern. They have other earthquakes going on around it, but those are the tremors that go around these major earthquakes. As well, in 2011, there was the huge tsunami that hit. In 2010, at the end of in 2010, Haiti got hit, but in 2011, that was an explosion that happened on the earth in terms of what was going on. We're going into another 4-year next year. And your radical occultist and Obama and others can't wait, because they have set you up for destruction. So here we go. Let's see if I can go down here. You're going to see other patterns. Oh. Your Jupiter table signs. When Jupiter is in Leo every 12 years, the patterns, I already have it up there. We needed to do the Union of North America, Canada. And Barack Obama knew all about it. He allowed Syria to explode. I mean, he got all these things for me as well. Terrible what he did. And the Democrats got it. They got the patterns in 2014 for me. I had put these things out. So all of these things are already online. And I'm telling you, the bushes aren't right either. So there's a lot of stuff here that isn't right. Let's put us on pause. Okay, here we go. Youngblood. We started working together here with the Academy of Management. I will go into that at some later point. Here we go. On 8:30, I contact them. Professor Youngblood tells me that I need to CC a copy to them so that this university knows that the Academy of Management is aware of what they're doing and what he's doing. And 5 days later, remember, the fifth house, it's a 4, it's a 5-4, it's a Leo 4. So we have John Zulli, who fired me and was part of my harassers with G4S, and now TrueCore. They're lying about who owns it, still G4S. Anyway, he is July the 31st. He is a fifth house 4. It comes together with 4. Meghan Markle has Barack Obama's birthday, August the 4th. They are fifth house 4. You're going to see this 5-4 going on. The lady who did Harry Potter with all of the witchcraft, she's the 31st of July. Leo 4. You're going to see a 5-4, the man who stalked me for a year, who went into my phone. He is a 5-4. I have a real problem with 5-4, and that's because God has a problem with 5-4. All right? You're looking at the people that use other people to get what they want. So here it goes in, and 5 days later, they're hit every 4 months. During that 4-month period, they get hit on a 4 numerology day, in which they get hit again with another series of earthquakes. Let's go in, because I move this forward. I let G4S know what it is. Let's put you on pause. Now, they are firing me. They have set me up to be fired. They are abusing the girls. They're not providing services. And the Department of Juvenile Justice knows this. The state knows what they're doing. All right, so does the district. Well, all right. So I go in and I tell them, there we go. I'm telling them about where these patterns go. I really did not want to come out and do this. I introduced the New Brunswick Law Society. I'm talking about the Union of North America. I'm telling them what goes on with the girls, how they're not being treated, what some of these ideas are. I'm letting them know that this is really hard. I'm always asking for the body of Christ to come up and help. God always tells me I have to go do these things, and I am letting them know that there is, I'm able to discuss God as in the Commonwealth because of the Queen. All right. And I'm letting them know about the patterns of war, but I'm also letting them know about the earthquakes and that New Zealand needs to come into Canada. So I'm reaching out to people that are firing me, letting them know of my prior work, telling them what the patterns are. And they're the largest private security operator in the world. And I forward to them a blank page to let them know when the date began. There's the email. So she sent me an I will be out of office. Let's see what's next. Okay. So, and they lied to the FCHR with impunity. Let's go in and let's close out of this, and we're going to take a look at how I reached out to her again right after Christmas when New Zealand got hit on the 22nd, 23rd. So let's make sure you understand what's going on. No, excuse me. This is Linda Offit. I'm sorry. Strachan. Right. After this, I let them know that they're getting lunch and their breakfast. I know that because I fought for them with the Department of Juvenile Justice. They looked into it. Why I think Christ Church should be looking at Canada. Now, up until that point of time, I was never thinking of bringing Christ Church over, and I might add, being one of the Five Eyes, they never helped me whatsoever. I'm not doing this because I love these people with all my heart. I'm doing this because this is what God told me to do. They got hit with another earthquake. Okay? And I'm letting them know that God let me know. Here, I'm bringing the Law Society back up. I let them know that this is all going to be part of that pattern. Now, there you were hit, folks. I told you. Now, where are you hit again? All right, the next time, I didn't realize you were getting punished. I didn't realize that it was a punishment for you until the end of October 2018. Here we have another series. It's on this day that I go out, on August the 21st, that I go out to try to protest what is happening with the British, the Canadians, the play that Obama and the British are making for North America through Canada. And within 3 minutes of going out, Miles Markle comes up claiming to be Meghan Markle's dad, and he begins to harass me for 6 weeks on the phone, tries to get me to sleep with him, all kinds of other things. Now, it is here, just a month earlier, that I send this off, to the Russians and put out my deal for the Russians. And that's just a month earlier. And she doesn't live there anymore, so this doesn't even matter. Okay, so this is home in Deerfield Beach. So this is when this was occurring, on the 21st of August. And that's when this man comes out trying to lead me astray. They send him out and they say that he is Meghan Markle. Oh, G4S still owns TrueCore. They lie, even online. Okay, so that was Miles Markle. What begins right after that? The hurricanes. You get hit with the hurricanes in 2017. You get, the first thing you get is Harvey, and that hits, and I guess that means blazing sword, and that hits Corpus Christi, the body of Christ, and it hits them hard. Then you get Irma, which is a goddess, a noble goddess, a warring noble goddess that can also be deer. And that begins then hitting all along Obamaville, where Obama was actually going, the Obiing and all that area. That was a strong point of Obama. And then you get hit with Maria, all right? And of course, I have the December 12, and I'm representing the Maria, but more Mary of Magdalene, more the anointed one. And then you get hit with Nate. And you get, 5 days later, you get 4 stupendous hurricanes that hit you. And they stop like 5 days after that man stopped harassing me in October. I didn't catch this until, and so you can see when a lot of this is beginning here. Let's put you on pause. Then, so I don't catch it until then. And then I don't catch that I need to bring Australia over. I always knew that the Chinese needed help, but I didn't know about the New Silk Road. And so I knew that the Chinese did need help, and I knew they were going into Africa. I knew Africa wasn't stable. I knew that I needed to allow Africa to be for Africa, because something was going to happen there as well. I knew Barack Obama wanted it out. The next time when I finally caught it again was when the Tree of Life went down, and it was actually when the planes went down. That's when I caught it. So I'll explain what happened. And that went online. Let's see if I can find that. And they try not to, oh, I got the Phantoma. You'll want to go in here. Clergy, the mark of the beast is Good Samaritan, the Good Samaritan. Her pregnancy lies. Let's see. Here's the Grumfeld. Oh, he's gross. I'll get into it. What they did there, that they're definitely not good people. The Obamas are definitely not good. And You have to close your eyes because they really screwed up the sound and I left it on. Intro to Miracles. That's a good place to go. It really is. Go there to the Intro of Miracles. What was I going to say? Okay, so what happened then was in 2000 and October the 6th of 2018, my church, which is, we're going to call them the Nicolaitans because that's what Ephesus is going to close down. My church put in a whole sermon. All of the readings pertained to marriage, whether it was Genesis or throughout it, it pertained to marriage. And it was an opportunity for the Catholic Church, for the church to go and change the definitions because they knew the definitions were wrong, but they didn't. They gave an entirely different sermon about the creation of God's animals and that, and the rightness of creation. They didn't even touch on marriage at all. And at this point, my heart began to hurt more and more and more and more and more and more. And I thought I was having a heart attack. And I thought, okay, is it a panic attack? I'm not sure. My dad's in the hospital. I'm not really talking to my parents. And I'm feeling like a heart. And so I thought, if I can just get over it, I'm ready to die. I really am. I'm living in a car. I spend some time in a storage unit. I don't have any place to go to. And when I go up to take communion, it's as though it's like somebody turned off the electricity. I just dropped. And this is where it gets really interesting. Because the other thing that priest did is that he ended saying, we are an inclusive community and we take transsexuals, we take this, we take that, we take that. So the church, rather than straightening out the paradigm, corrupted everything. And that's what they did. So that church has to fall. And they have done something else that has caused me not to be able to go back to it. And that's a different issue. They had a whole Illuminati. Yeah, I'll put that online too. So what happened? That was the 6th. Now let's get back into the hurricanes because we're coming up on the 6th. 5 days later, you got hit with Michael. Now, when it went up, I thought for sure it was going to hit Tallahassee because that's where I thought it should be hitting. Instead, it hit Mexico. And I thought to myself, why is it hitting Mexico? Why is it hitting Mexico Beach first? What are you going to hit in Mexico? Well, shortly after that, another hurricane called Wilma turned around and went up and hit Mexico at the Elsa Maria first. That's where it hit first. So the question is, who is like God? And then it turns around and it hits the three Marias to let you know that it is this Guadalupe, that it is this three Marias, that it is the third Maria, which would be the Sagittarian, that she is the one that is like God. And I have been baptized 3 times, consecrated with oil 4 times. I've got a lot of things going on here, folks. So this is one of the reasons why if you suffer enough for God and you're listening, all of a sudden God begins to put the patterns out. Now, remember I said, oh, by the way, when my parents had me institutionalized over the summer for things that are actually happening, and the doctors, I said, can you look at the documents? They said, oh no, we just look at symptoms. We're not looking after the documents. Well, I behaved so well, they didn't know how to hold me. My family, within 3 months, everyone ended up in the hospital because of their actions. My sister's bad karma because of what she did to our family. Each one of her child has an autoimmune disease, and 2 of them are deadly. I mean, this is not good when you don't behave well. It turns around and bites you in the hiney. So you got that series. Again, it was 5 days after, then it turned around and did this. But then as soon as those pipe bombs went out, I knew, I felt it went right through me that it was the Democrats again. And that it was Barack Obama and group that were setting them up, and they were trying to put a tizzy into what was happening with elections because they wanted Trump to fail. So I let the Democrats know. You can see it on my phone log. In fact, I even said that I had to go to the Republicans because I knew that Hillary Clinton was set up. I knew it was Barack Obama. And I knew that they're hitting all these things now as well. But I went to the Republican office and I went to Mr. Caruso as well as called him on the phone. And he said, well, he thought it sounded like a setup as well. It still is. They're putting pictures out there for this man that are photoshopped. It's crazy. But anyway, this Mr. Sayoc. Getting back to what happened after that, in the summer, they came out with Hotel Artemis, and they did that to make Artemis and the Church of Artemis look stupid. They knew I was coming, so they decided to discredit her. Then, in order to discredit further, because I already had the invitation for the Tree of Life online, they went through and killed all those people in the Tree of Life. That was about Barack Obama. As soon as that happened, I said to God, and I'm in the storage unit, and I'm saying, I'm just walking through it. I said, God, you've got to hit him. You've got to hit him hard, and you have to make it obvious, and we have to know who it is. And you've got to show it. Well, at that point, the next day, the plane went down for Indonesia, and that went down in Indonesia. That plane, that was the 737 MAX, and it was the Lion of Indonesia. Well, I had never really thought of Barack Obama being Indonesian, but as I began to look it up, I realized there's a high probability he wasn't a U.S. citizen, that it was Indonesian and Kenyan. All right? And then when all right, let's move back a little bit. They had my car broken into on the 31st of October because I'm getting my case ready for the school district. And so they broke into my car, took my new computer after they shut down the old one and ruined that in June, which is what they did. They wouldn't let me work on it. They wouldn't let me get a case out then. Then they took it the 31st, broke into my car, took my purse, took my computer, left my life in a tizzy then, took all my records, took everything as it was. And 8 days later, you got a double fire hit in California. Meghan Markle put California on her coat of arms. This is sedition and treason, and I pointed it out to our government last spring, and I put that online. Let's see if I can find it. She has no business coming back into this country unless she's going to be charged for treason. Here we go. African American civil rights leaders did in fact help to undermine this. Treason and sedition, absolutely. I mean, please look at this. She is involved in treason and sedition. My Facebook was harassed. It's amazing what they were doing, what could not be looked after. So treason and sedition, Meghan Markle. Here we go. This is what the whole thing looks like. Does Markle have the right to claim parts of the United States on her coat of arms? Absolutely not. And the British were just planning on letting her go through. So the whole notion of them coming back into this country, only if she's willing to face treason charges. Here we go. So 8 days later, you have a double 8, 2 different fires going on in California right after the election, because they had tampered on that. They had broken into my stuff. What they had done with the Tree of Life, you got smacked. California got smacked. They also got smacked in the summertime. Nostradamus made it clear that she had until the beginning of Leo in 2018 to get on board with the Tree of Life offer. They had to back away from what they were doing. Barack Obama, Meghan Markle and group, they had to back away. It's in the documentation of Nostradamus. They didn't. And when they didn't, California went into burn view from the 23rd of July until August the 30th. Another Leo situation. I mean, this is what they're doing. Okay, you want to do that? Now, let's get on with the planes going down, the 7-Eleven planes going down. This Alan Drews, who has been, I guess he's one of their Leo 5 stalkers, As I'm explaining this to him on March the 9th and explaining everything to him, and I'm saying, I said to him, God, they have to hit him and they have to hit him hard to let it happen. The next day, the 737 8 MAX from Ethiopia going to Kenya, I didn't know Boeing was listed out of Chicago. That went down. All of a sudden, besides my case going out on February the 5th, that both Pulaski got her hands on, and the Mexicans, the New Zealanders, a few others of the Russians got their hands on that again, although I had been in contact since then. I mean, before then. When they all got their hands on that, things began. Pelosi stopped saying we need to impeach Trump. She stopped that, and she got up and she did her little mock clap. But as soon as I told Alan that on the 9th, the 10th, that plane went down. And that's when you saw the Mueller report began to move very quickly, because everybody knew it was Barack Obama. When I saw Sarah Latham get up and leave, I got a lot of I got several Freud statements that were maniacal that was sent to me regarding this group, and Alan was one of them. And Freud, and so when I saw all the people that Sarah Latham had worked with, as soon as I saw her, and I knew she was part of the LBGT group that is all pushing Meghan Markle and Barack Obama, as soon as I saw that, I knew immediately that she was in with those email slip-ups that went to WikiLeaks. I couldn't even get into WikiLeaks. They wouldn't even let my documentation get to him. So I knew she was part of that breach because she was a senior person involved with Mrs. Clinton. I also knew that both Clinton and Trump had Zionism that was pushing them, because both their daughters had to marry married men whose fathers had gone to jail for corruption that were Jewish within 2 years of Barack Obama being president, and they both got married within a year of each other. I mean, I knew that there were other things going on in this presidency, and I made it clear to the embassies that I knew about this. So as soon as I saw Sarah, I mentioned, and I put it out there, Sarah Latham, and I put it up online, you saw movement regarding the British again. And as soon as that plane went down, you saw movement regarding the Mueller report. They began to get moving on it. And what else was I going to say? And then when I mentioned it again, and in terms of other groups being a part of it, because I put it on my phone, but I set it to Alan and it's on my phone. So I put it online so that you could see the dates for it. When I said to Alan that Obama was behind the massacre in the music massacre in London, and that he was behind the June 14th, 2017 and June 14th, 2018 tower fires in England, he was behind the Orlando massacre. When I said that, that's when the plane, the 737 plane going from Orlando to California, had to come back. So at this point, the government knew very strongly that God had given them signs that it's got Obama and Markle and what's going on, it's all over it. And of course, I show you online and other places that as soon as the bombing goes off, the massacre in Manchester goes off, within 2 days, Barack Obama is standing there smiling with Prince Harry, and Prince Harry is like frightened. And this was right before, he preceded Trump, like, look at what I can do. And Mrs. Obama was, and I didn't think it was Obama's, but Mrs. Obama was in Paris when Notre Dame was bombed. When Notre Dame went up in flames. And of course, at the same time, there's a little fire that goes on in the mosque, the major mosque that's in Jerusalem. A little fire, just to say we can sympathize. Which really brings into the question the whole Jussie Smollett I always knew that that was a setup. I knew that the gunmen in New Zealand, that that was a Barack Obama setup. I mean, if you're against Islam, you you don't go to Pakistan on a vacation. You don't go to some of the countries he went to on a vacation. You don't say you're for communist China. Communist China doesn't exist anymore. You don't travel from Australia to go shoot people in New Zealand, and the whole thing was stupid. And there is things in common between that man and between Mr. Sayak. It's just they're quite a group. And of course, I've been hit horrifically, both through obeying their witchcraft. I mean, they let me know. They sent me documents. I have it online. Meghan Markle is involved in witchcraft. And I told you that the church has even been involved in witchcraft. So please help me. If I have any kind of karma that God has given me so that I can stop this process and call out the witchcraft, please give me the authority to do it. And if I can get down to the matter of what's happening, again, I've made it clear, I'm not a great fan of New Zealand. This is something that God told me that I needed to let them know what was happening and to put that offer out there. For Australia to come over here, that's simply to free up the land so that China can get it, so that it doesn't march through the rest of the world to take it over. Because then you will go to war. You won't survive this. And if you want to see how heaven thinks of it, we're the ones that have fisting, how to fist on the internet. We're the ones that have demonic drag queens showing up for library hour. Oh, I have to show you that. Now, I'm calling the young women in this country, and I'm calling the National Organization of Women accountable. This is 10/16/2017. This is about the time that Barack Obama said that he is going to take on Kehinde Wiley's as the portrait artist. And Kehinde Wiley in 2012 put out a portrait of two portraits of African women, nicely dressed, beheading white women's heads, and he called it Kill Wiley. Drag queen demons read to kids at Michelle Obama's library. This is how heaven sees the United States. This is how we're looking at the voice of the National Organization of Women. Okay, let's take a look at this. See, those little kids can't even look at him. Can't even look at him. You're demonic. Any national organization of women that supports any of this, just plain demonic. You're not supporting women, you're supporting demons. This woman is demonic. Look at these eyes. Crazy, absolutely crazy. This is sick. And this is Michelle Obama's library. Really? Oh, there's more. Here we go. They're grooming kids. So of course, when I tell you I have those men that are online and they went after me, these are drag queens and they hate women. I'm just letting you know. They hate us. A good book to do is Sex and Destiny. And she does, Germaine Greer does not buy that transgender men are that claim to be women are women. I mean, there's a lot of us feminists. I'm a graduate from Seneca Falls, New York, went to Wells College. I don't buy any of this. I do not buy any of it. I mean, what are you doing, ladies? No thanks. I want to finish with something else so that you understand just how bad they are. They don't want you having children. Okay, this is November the 30th, and this was done. I mean, they've been waiting for a long time. I used to do Be Thou My Vision, but I would do Be Thou My Breastplate. And of course, out of Ephesus, we've got to have that breastplate. There are times, as it says, we are taking on. Nostradamus is letting you know that you're leaving the age of this is the queen bee and the simple woman, and you're becoming normal women. But the same is true for men. Normal men are going to take down that erroneous tree of life. He also lets you know how crazy the clergy are, pontificating. He lets you know where the scandal is. This is God the Father Mother, the XXXY individual. This is the Sagittarian. This is the Artemis that's shooting out the age of Pisces. Nothing wrong with Pisces. The only way you could survive you were going to go be crucified, which is what's happened to me for years. This is the erroneous book written under Leo. He's letting you know this is the age of Leo, the age of the beast. It's the age of the lion. And we are tearing up the meaning here. And the one male, I thought that had to do with Genesis. That has to do with Revelations. You shouldn't be looking for a male. You should be looking for an older woman. How do you do? Oh, Jesus was not like Malachi Zadok. He was more like Isaac and the Essenes. Here we go. I go into this, but you're going to see he wants the Commonwealth. They wanted the next Commonwealth. This is from The Guardian. Should be Barack Obama. First, he wants North America. Kehinde Wadley. There's Kehinde Wadley. He makes that announcement in October 2000 I think it was October 17th or 18th. As soon as he knows Meghan Markle is going to come in, is when he makes that announcement. And also, the Ethiopian crown prince married an American and stayed in the United States so that they could help African American men, but not help Ethiopian women. Anyway, we know what that's about. Kill Whitey. This is Michelle Obama and Duchess Kate. Boy, she really hated us. Isn't that lovely? That's how they really think about us. And Nostradamus makes it clear that they want to absolutely ruin white women having children. Cyberstock. Here he is. Kehinde Wadley. Gay African American man. It's okay when he does this. And it's okay when the president has him as his portrait artist. So I speak to the National Organization of Women. You should completely disaggregate yourself from the anything having to do with race relations or anything having to do with the only issue you should be looking at is what has to do with real biological women. That's it. And race shouldn't even be it. Race is not an issue. Only those things that pertain to women. Do not get involved in race at all. African Americans have undermined the women's rights movement, and I have a whole section online that did it. I discuss it. It completely undermined them. All right, you don't have to think. I don't like this man at all. And that 2012, Barack Obama had gotten all of my information, and they were just pulling everything, all my research apart. And Mrs. Obama was taking everything that she wanted, which, by the way, I do think I've seen a penis on her. And No. Kill women? How do we kill them? Well, they have been trying to kill me for 7 years. Actually longer. Don't feel sorry for these people. I offered them the tree of life. I offered that everybody could come out and talk about what's happened and make restitutions. They refused. Okay, thank you, everyone.